So, you may have heard about the fact that the tension between the US and Western countries on the one hand and the Russia on other hand has been rising in the last couple of months over the Ukraine. So today we are going to talk about why exactly Russia want to have an influence over the Ukraine and other countries surrounding the Russia. But in order to understand this, all this crisis, will have to take a look at the background of this issue as well. So earlier, one geographer, his name was Mackinder. Actually, he gave this heartland theory, saying that whoever will actually will have a control over this area, which he called it as a heartland, because this area is surrounded from the west uh, by the Ural mountains. Here in this part, this is surround from the west, it is surrounded by the Ural mountain. On the south, you have Yablonavoy, Stanovoy, Kolyama mountains, and on the north this area cannot be penetrated because of the fact that this whole area remain frozen all the time. So that's why from this side also this area cannot be penetrated, and this side also actually this area remain frozen. So that's why this whole area act like a fortress. That's why the Mackinder called it as a heartland. Heartland. So Mackinder said that anyone who will have a control over this area, because this area was very vast and it was very rich in terms of the resources. There are a lot of conifer forest also, with the help of which we can easily make fleets. So that's why Mackinder envisaged that whoever will control this heartland will control the world island, which actually consisted of the whole of the Eurasia and Africa. And whoever will control this world island, he will control the whole of the world. So his theory says that anybody who will control the heartland will control the world island, and whoever will control the world island will control the whole of the world. So in this heartland only, the anybody could have access only from the south of Ural, from this area. So this heartland could have been penetrated only from this area, and that is the south of Ural. And that was the reason why actually when Russia has been attacked from this area twice, first by the Napoleon and the second time it was by the Hitler. So that's why this Hitler actually asked this area from the Poland, and when the Poland denied, then the Hitler actually attacked the Poland because he wanted to have a control over the heartland. Although both of the time Russia was able to defend itself, but actually it had to pay huge cost for defending itself. So that is what the heartland is. Then later on, one of the American actually geographer gave another theory which is known as rimland theory. So rimland, actually this Spikeman, who was an American geographer, said that the heartland is heartland because of the rimland. So he said this heartland is a heartland because of the rimland. So this is the heartland you have here, and he says this heartland is surrounded from all the sides by this, you can see by this, all the rimland countries. So this is you have a rimland. This is a rimland. So this Spikeman said that heartland is heartland because of the rimland. So if anybody will have a control over this rimland, then it will squeeze the heartland, and it can also have a control over the heartland. So Spikeman said that anybody who will have a control over the rimland will have a control over the heartland, and that is why it will have a control over the whole of the world. So this, because of the fact that when anybody will be having a control over this rimland area, then it can squeeze the heartland. Heartland will not have any kind of access to the warm waters, so that's why it will get squeezed. After the Second World War, this Russia basically, actually, when it has an influence over the surrounding countries like Kazakhstan, Ukraine, Georgia, then it felt that it can secure its border. But that's why after the Second World War, the Russia actually tried to have an influence over other countries as well, because China became communist. So that's why it actually didn't have the threat from China. Then India, it also signed the treaty with the India also. That's why it got actually a little bit of influence in India as well. In Iran, he actually, after this Shah was toppled, then also Russia got its influence increased after the Ayatollah Khamenei came to the power. And that was also the reason why Afghanistan, Russia also was interested in Afghanistan, because through Afghanistan and Pakistan, it wanted to have a access to the this Indian Ocean, Arabian Sea. So that's why Russia actually tried to have its influence over the rimland. But after 1991, in 1991, when USSR got itself disintegrated, then Russia lost a huge amount of area after the disintegration. But both US as well as Western power actually promised that they are not going to, you know, expand the NATO to the Russian border. But in the actually when so that's why actually, but in the 1999, the first enlargement took place, in which the Czech Republic and Hungary and Poland was given the membership of NATO. All of them was earlier the member of Warsaw. Then 5 years later, also 7 more countries, including 3 Baltic countries, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, was also included in the NATO. That's why Russia felt threatened, but actually was not able to respond forcefully, because at that point of time Vladimir Putin was busy actually reconstructing the economy of the Russia. That's why they could not respond. But when actually in 2008, when the US promised membership to the Georgia and Ukraine in the Bucharest summit, then Russia actually responded forcefully, and that's how actually he sent actually its forces to the Georgia, where the separatist movement was taking place, and is still right now. These breakaway portion of the Georgia, that is Abkhazia and Ossetia, are still in the control of the Russian forces. So that's how actually Russia felt threatened. Then The Black Sea actually, which was considered as a Russian lake, because only through Black Sea it has the access to the warm water. And along the Black Sea, all these countries like Turkey, Bulgaria, and Romania was already NATO members. So if the Ukraine and Georgia also was included in the NATO, then Russia realized that he will actually lose. He would have lost its control in the Black Sea, and that was the reason why actually the in 2014 when the Yanukovych Mr. Yanukovych, who was pro Russian, was toppled. Then Russia went on to capture the Crimea Peninsula, establishing its control over the Sevastopol port, where actually the Russian fleet actually is based. So that's how actually you may have realized that the in the last couple of years that Russia has tried to actually establish its influence in the rimland area, because how exactly Russia has gone on to get its influence increased in the rimland area, like we have already discussed that South Ossetia and Abkhazia are the self-proclaimed republic that is broke away from that has been broken away from the Georgia, which are still controlled by the Russian-backed forces. In Ukraine, also, eastern Donbas region is actually controlled by the rebel, which is backed by the Russians. So that's how. In this, you know that in the 2020, in 2020, when protest erupted in Belarus after the controversial election, then Putin sent the forces to restore the order in the country. So that's how in Belarus also he has been able to increase his influence, and with the help of what is Belarus also recently, there's Putin has been able to actually create the migrant crisis along the Poland border. Then in the when in the same year when Russia also sent a lot of forces to peacekeeping forces to end the war between Armenia and Azerbaijan. So that's how this Putin has been able to re-establish its influence in the Caucasus region also. And this month itself, when the violent unrest broke out in Kazakhstan, then which is the largest and wealthiest country in the Central Asia, its leader actually turned to Russia for help, and Putin immediately actually dispatched troops to the under the banner of CSTO, Collective Security Treaty Organization, to quell the protests. So that's how you may have realized that Russia has been able to restore its influence in the rimland area. It's still trying to actually increase in its influence in the rimland area, because that is how Russia can secure its border. This actually why actually the Putin has been able to increase its influence in this rimland area is because of the fact that there are a lot of geopolitical circumstances which is in favor of Russia, because right now the NATO has recently has been defeated in the Afghanistan. That's why Putin knows that it cannot afford to have another war in Ukraine. Then the as far as Western Europe is concerned, Europe is rhetorically he actually criticized Russia, but they is actually is criticism is not backed by the some kind of force, because at the best what they can do, they can because they are dependent basically upon the Russian gas. So that is why their criticism actually does not actually is not backed by some kind of force. Then so actually what is the uh, uh, what actually the Western European country can do? They can, at the best, they can put some economic sanction on Russia. But in the last couple of years, by having a good relationship with the China, now Russia can easily, escape the effect of the economic sanction that is likely to be put by the Western countries. So that's why it will be very difficult for the Western European country to actually held back Russia.